Singapore's Defence Minister Chun Sing says the energy grid, financial connectivity and data networks are the key areas of growth for ASEAN that will propel the rest of the economic activities. He said this at a dialogue on Singapore's competitiveness organised by the Singapore Institute of International Affairs. Nasyrah Rohim reports.
Amid geopolitical tensions and supply chain disruptions, Defence Minister Chun Sing says ASEAN can emerge stronger. This by building on what he's called three commanding heights of the new economy: energy, finance and data. That includes an integrated ASEAN power grid, seamless financial connectivity and data flows to create new products and services.
ASEAN, the data is very rich because of the diversity of the population base. The question is that will we be able to overcome the tendency or the temptation to do data protectionism, where we see data as if it is oil, where it must be with me and not with you, and the people cannot use the data and cross-pollinate, if you like, the data to have new insights for new business propositions.
For Singapore, Mr. Chan says what's important is staying open and connected with the rest of the world. He adds that the country must stay out of trouble and build resilience by diversifying its supply chains and markets.
If one sector depends on more than one-third of its input from one particular source country or company, then I think we need to take a serious hard look at it to see whether we can be held ransom and we will be at the mercy of other people. On the other hand, if any sector depends on more than one particular market for more than one-third of its output, then I think we should also be rightfully concerned. So this is just a rule of thumb. It's not magic science, but we need to then build the diversity in order for us to have the resilience.
As for ASEAN, Mr. Chan says the bloc can send a signal to the rest of the world that it is prepared to harmonise certain rules progressively. This, he says, will give businesses the confidence to invest in the region.
In an earlier dialogue, Transport Minister Jeffrey Xiao says Singapore can turn its ageing population and shrinking workforce into a competitive advantage.
I think if we turn the constraint of smaller numbers into an asset, I think we have a good chance, because we, with a smaller Singaporean base, actually I can invest more per person. Train them more intensively, build a structure to enable them to get access to reskilling resources more quickly, help companies, incentivize them to retrain Singaporeans and prioritize those efforts.
Mr. Xiao says younger Singaporeans are more likely to change jobs more frequently in future than the previous generations. This means the government has to redouble resources on reskilling to help workers adapt to the changing economy.
The center of gravity will shift from the pre-employment stage, away from schools, away from universities, to in employment, when you are going for retraining more often, or when you're in between jobs, you're doing more training and reskilling and building up the capabilities to be able to adapt to take on new jobs and to do new things.
From preparing the workforce for AI to encouraging greater ASEAN integration, these are some of the ways the report says Singapore can boost its competitiveness. Now let's take a look at some of the recommendations from the Singapore Institute of International Affairs. To help workers adapt to AI, the report suggests new AI skills training and recognized certifications. Mapping job functions could also help firms identify tasks where AI can assist while keeping people in the loop, and with grants to support firms in this restructuring. The report also recommends the longer paid apprenticeship for students to gain real-work experience before graduating. This means education curriculums will need to change to accommodate longer periods of work-based learning, with the government leading by example. The report also calls for clearer rules as more professionals take on part-time roles across different companies. Now, these include developing guidelines on how benefits, CPF, and taxes should be managed, as well as platforms to connect workers with employers. The report recommends greater partnership with ASEAN to help companies strengthen their competitiveness, and this can be through infrastructure investments and joint industrial parks serving as a base for green technologies, precision engineering, and AI data centers.
But Singaporeans also need to understand why they need to push ASEAN forward, why it makes sense not just to be nice to our neighbours, but how we can gain from it as businesses, as citizens. I think this next step, governments need to pave the way, businesses need to follow up, looking for new partners, new economic zones.
And for more on the 12th recommendation by SIIA, I'm joined by Mr. Satya Ramamurthy, Associate Council Member of the Singapore Institute of International Affairs and co-director of the report. Now, Mr. Satya, you made a very striking observation in your report. You mentioned that multinational companies raise challenges engaging political office holders and navigating cross-government issues, including the lack of a single point of contact within government. Tell us what's missing in this current system.
The system has served us very well when dealing with very specific issues like increased investment, growing the workforce and the economy. When it comes to cross-cutting issues like sustainability and climate adaptation, what our roundtable participants and members have said is that there is a need, particularly as the government has taken a whole-of-government approach to addressing these issues. It's commendable that it's very cross-cutting and it involves a number of agencies. There is a need for a single focal point of contact nationally to enable these companies to get the decisions on specific issues. So it's a one of emphasis as the issues are emerging, are becoming more cross-cutting.
Now, in your report, you also mentioned about Singapore investors, that they need to have a better understanding of the policies and politics of our neighbours. Do you not see that they know enough?
Yes, they do. The difference is that we're asking them to get under the hood a bit more. For example, why is Malaysia pushing advanced manufacturing more? Why, for example, is Indonesia trying to control export of commodities, strategic commodities? Why is Vietnam looking to build a financial center? We are asking companies to be more thoughtful and early in their engagement on policies so that they can design their strategies before policies become practice, so that they are able to shape them and look at this in the context of what Singapore is doing and become more competitive regionally.
There's also a warning in your report about how AI will be taking over entry-level jobs. So what must Singapore do to make sure that young people still get a good start in their career?
We can see that this is an issue which is not new because of AI. It's already started with the issue of cost and competitiveness. What we are suggesting in the report is an approach which recognizes the fact that we don't really know today where and how these jobs will be lost. What we are asking is for an approach which looks at particularly entry-level workers, not wait for them to graduate. In fact, the ESR report makes a point about not waiting for people to be retrenched. We think in the same way, don't wait for people to graduate. Start early in their education cycle in the universities. Create not one-off internships, but really apprenticeships which are baked into their education curriculum, work as well as study, and with government probably providing some of the base load for this, and where the AI-based paths are more clear, so that when they graduate into jobs which are there, not into jobs which don't exist.
Indeed, you recommended work-based learning, more apprenticeship, but with closer ASEAN integration, some Singaporeans may worry about more competition for jobs. Is there a real cause for worry in this area?
Well, I think those concerns are valid. However, I think it's about what jobs. And I think there are two kinds of jobs which are always going to grow as the economy develops and as we age. First, as the economy develops and AI becomes more embedded, I think there are going to be jobs in design, in AI-related roles which are more related to technology, as well as R&D and innovation roles. So it's about then preparing the younger workers and some of the middle-aged workers for those jobs. But there's another area of work which is resilient to AI, which is care-related, which is social sectors, which is related to also things like where there's a significant human interaction. The issue there is those jobs are not as well paying. And I think, again, here the ESR makes a good point of really upskilling those jobs so that Singaporeans can take on those roles. So we see two sides of this, and none of these can be replaced by ASEAN.
Now, very quickly, when we talk about ASEAN countries, of course, have different political systems, different policies, different priorities. How does Singapore build lasting partnerships in such a diverse region, do you think?
I think it's a great opportunity. As earlier the Minister Chun Sing said, I think there are multiple axes on which Singapore can build partnerships with ASEAN, and the first of them being really energy. And I think in this regard, the opportunity for Singapore is really understanding that these political systems are different, working alongside different cycles, building working level relationships, business to business relationships, people to people relationships, all of which will outlast political systems and create something where interests are central to the achievement of goals.
Well, thank you so much for elaborating more on your report. And we've been speaking to Mr. Satya Ramamurthy, Associate Council Member at SIIA. Thank you.